It's always good to reconnect with a deep spirit and somebody who self-made cat as a musician, sang for his supper, raised his family, always remains an optimist. Haven't talked to him in a minute. Herlin Riley, welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Jake Feinberg, thank you, brother. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and pleasure to talk to you right now.
I wanted to read you this quote from the late, great Charlie Neville. He said, quote, "One of the spiritual elements that was kept alive in New Orleans in the European mind was called voodoo. In New Orleans, it's called hoodoo. It's part of the Yoruba religion, and there was another religious sect from Congo area as well. The music was the main connection between the people and the spirits. The drum was the main connector at a spiritual ceremony or church service. In New Orleans, the spiritualist churches, the holiness churches, they called themselves, the way they dressed in the church and the things they did in the church. After going to Haiti and witnessing a real voodoo ceremony, I realized that's what they were doing in those churches. Even the possession, being ridden by the Lord, when the Spirit came and took over the person and spoke to the people. They dressed in white with the pignons on their head of the women and their white dresses. When I saw that, I thought that's exactly what they were doing in Haiti. This was a church where Mr. Lasty was the pastor and drummer." And I just wanted you to talk about how close you got to that hoodoo experience.
Well, I knew everything that you're mentioning in there is part of what was going on when I was a boy growing up. My grandfather he wasn't a pastor; he was a deacon in the church.
What's the difference, though? What is a deacon?
A pastor was one that actually runs the church and he's the head of the church. He's the spiritual. I guess he's the one who gives the sermons, and he's the one who kind of. The deacon is actually assist the pastor. He's like an assistant,
like a liaison. Yeah, I did.
So he's not the actual head, the one who's actually in charge of the church. And all of those things that you mentioned is quite accurate. Although when they talk about hoodoo or voodoo and that kind of thing, those things weren't really mentioned. In the church as I was growing up as a boy. But it's true that the ladies were dressed in whites, and not all the time, but a lot of times they were just dressed in white, and they had the head dressed in white, and they wore chapel caps, and the music would go on. It would become almost like a chant, almost like a trance kind of thing that would go on, and people were struck by, for lack of a better word, the Holy Spirit that kind of engulfed them, and they would start to shout and they'd pass out and all those kinds of things. And perhaps those are the kinds of things that went on in Haiti. I haven't been to Haiti yet to experience that myself, but most of what Charles mentioned is accurate.
Well, no, what I was going to say is, like, how did you integrate, like, early on when you were playing behind your grandpa, like, what was because today I don't go to church, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm an authentic church goer, but it seems to me to be a lot more vocal music as opposed to rhythm. And
when I was growing up, there was a lot of rhythm. There was vocal. There was a lot of music that had the messages in them. But also, then a lot of the groups, they would have quartets, and they would have even in congregational singing, they would just the rhythm would kind of carry the music, and oftentimes the rhythm would be so infectious, and so it would go on for sometimes 30 or 40 to 30 minutes or so, where you'd be playing the same kind of groove and the same kind of thing. And so for me, growing up in that environment, it really it touched me in a special way, because now when I play, my playing is based on grooves and based on rhythm and the repetition of the rhythm. That repetition, when you have rhythmic repetition and that kind of thing, it becomes like a trance for you.
Exactly.
And so now, even today, in today's time, when you hear a lot of rap music and hip hop and all those kind of things, it's not necessarily about the words that they're
It's the rhythm.
about.
Yeah, it's the rhythm.
It's the rhythm that catches you, and the ground rhythm of the bass and the drums, and then when they're speaking and doing the spoken word thing, that's done in another rhythm. So it's a counter rhythm that they're using that goes works parallel to the ground rhythm of the drums and the bass.
Wow.
So all music starts with rhythm. That's my philosophy.
So you would you say that, like, I'm just curious about, did you have experiences, those words were not used, voodoo and hoodoo. I also want to be clear, Charlie added this, quote, there was no history written about any of this. There's just, this is a very undocumented but very important time, I feel, in music history, in the most musical city.
I agree with that. Because there's not a lot of written history about it, and it was something that was very, very social, and in my community, and I'm not sure if that was. I guess there were other places maybe around the country that kind of participated in those things, because when I was in the spiritual church, they would have actual spiritual church conferences, which would be in places in different parts of the country, like Blytheville, Arkansas, or sometimes it may be certain parts of Texas, and different areas of the country, mostly I guess in the southern region, where they would have these kind of, perhaps Cincinnati, probably the most northern place that I remember as a boy growing up. So that is something has not been documented in that way.
It's interesting. I want you to talk about, if as best you can remember, it took basically there was no instrumentation other than drums with your family in that church. The trance started through not singing chorally, but through the rhythm.
Yeah, it was mostly drums, but it was also piano.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Sometimes organ, sometimes guitar, sometimes bass. So when they had these, they would have like quartet singers, like the Zion Harmonizers and the Dixie Hummingbirds and Highway QCs, Absolutely. People like that who were gospel quartets. They would actually come to the church sometimes, and then they would get into a call and response thing with the voice, and also, but underneath the call and response with the voice, there would be a repetitive rhythm that would go on and on and on and on and on.
That is so hip. That's so hip. Yeah.
It was just the way. I didn't think of it in any terms other than that was just a way of life for myself as a boy growing up. That was just part of that. That was just there, and so I got to play. I got to play the drums behind those, in those settings. Wow. I got to play the drums in those settings, and as a result of that, I think it has helped. It has really, really shaped me as a professional musician today.
How has it shaped you?
Knowing the power of rhythm, understanding the power of rhythm, understanding how, early on when I was playing the drums and that, and I would drop the tempo. There were these old men who would tell me, "Hey, boy, pick it up. Don't let it drop."
Right.
Or they would also tell me, "Don't play too fast. You're rushing." And so it let me understand how to play inside of a pocket, and not rush or slow down in the rhythm, but always maintain an intensity inside the rhythm.
That's right. That's right.
So that's how it helped to shape me.
I was going to ask you if you could talk about the time how you connected with Ellis Marsalis. I know, obviously, it's very well you and Winton have been cooking the groove. for many years. But I interviewed Ellis. He's the only cat I've interviewed so far from that family, and he was a good cat. But I was like, I wonder when you and him played together.
Well, I got to play with him a lot as a boy. Not as a boy, but as a young man.
Wow.
And one of the things that I did with him was the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival, which led me to play with Wynton Marsalis, with Wynton soon after that. And so I guess my connection to Ellis is deep, because what happened was that I had uncles who were musicians. My uncle Melvin Lasty, David Lasty, and Walter Lasty. They were all musicians, and my uncle Melvin especially was a peer of Ellis Marsalis. They were born around the same time.
Absolutely, yeah.
They shared, they played music together, and so
they made records together, right? I mean, they recorded together. I think.
Yeah, they did a few records together as well. Especially with the AF4 record label, which
All for One, yep. AF Cannonball was involved.
Yeah. So Ellis Marsalis knew who I was, because older musicians, they're always looking out for the younger musicians to see who's coming up, who's developing, who will be the next torchbearers for the music. And so as a young man growing up, Ellis Marsalis got to see me and watch me develop and grow into my musichood, my manhood as a musician, watch me mature as a musician. So I had been playing with him for a little while. I can't remember exactly when I first met him. I don't know, but it's like, when did you meet your first cousin? Your first cousin, you don't know. Something like that.
Well, you also have I think you have an unusually large family. I think it's cool. I mean, the families down there are just. Anyway, I was going to say, you had already stopped playing trumpet. You were playing drums at this point in your life.
Yes. And I can tell you specific stories that how I joined Wynton's band is that I was playing a gig at the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival. This is around 1986 or 87, something like that. And so I was playing a trio setting with Ellis Marsalis and Reginald Veal. And so Wynton happened to be playing at New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival as well. And so when he finished his gig, he ran over to the stage where his dad was performing with the trio. And so he sat in with us, and he played with us. And at the end of the set, he spoke to, he liked the feeling of myself and Reginald as a rhythm section to playing with his dad. And so as a result, he asked his dad if it was cool if he would reach out to us to come and play in his band. And his dad was like, sure, man, these are independent contractors. I have no ties on anybody, so if you want to call them, I'm sure they'll welcome your call. Sure enough, he called Reginald Veal first, and then he called me later on. Wow. And that was in 1987 he called Reginald. In 1988 he called me to come and play in the band, and we became part of the whole Wynton Marsalis. First of all, it was a quintet. Then it was augmented to a sextet, then a septet, and then eventually it became the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra. So Ellis was kind of like the catalyst that introduced me, professionally speaking, to Wynton. Where he got to actually play with me. Wynton had heard me before playing with Ahmad Jamal in London. He came because he was playing with Art Blakey. He came and heard me play with Ahmad Jamal. Branford came by when I was playing this show called One More Time in the West End Theatre District of London. Wow. So they heard me play in that whole another type setting. But Wynton, when he played with me with his dad in 87 or 86, I can't remember exactly what it was. But when he heard me playing in that setting, he knew that I was able to swing and I could play, different kinds of grooves and that kind of thing. That sparked him to call me to come and play in his band. So Ellis was definitely a catalyst to make that happen.
Right. Very. Speaking of the fact that it's gone from Ellis to Wynton now to the, Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra. I mean, can you just talk to younger cats again, sort of talking about swinging a small ensemble versus a big band, where you're dealing with a lot better acoustics than you would be at Hayes's Chicken Shack or when Dizzy did that recording on the Riviera. Mickey Roker's drums were sliding off the pier.
Yeah.
You know, like you have better sound today, but how do you still play with intensity and be able to swing a big band while still making it feel really good?
Well, one thing is that the intensity doesn't come from volume. We have to realize that. And one thing, when I played with Winston in the big band, in the septet setting, oftentimes we would not use monitors.
Right.
And the whole point was to be able to play with control. And so he would say to me, drums being the loudest instrument in the band, he said, man, you have to play with control. And if you can't hear the bass, you're playing too loud. If you can't hear the acoustic bass, you're playing too loud. And so we weren't using amplifications and that kind of thing. So we learned to play the music with the natural sound of the instruments, but playing with intensity and confidence and commitment to the music, that it didn't need to have to be loud to be effective.
Exactly.
It doesn't need to be loud to be effective.
Right.
And so then, when we switched over to playing, not necessarily switched over, but when we just kind of moved over to playing in the big band setting, for the role of the drums was a little different. It's two ways of playing it. It's two ways that you play it simultaneously. One way is when you're playing an ensemble with the big band, is that you have to catch the licks of the horns. Understand how to accentuate the horns rhythms and the music that's built inside of the music, to know how to catch. Maybe when the trumpet players are playing, you may crash the snare drum and the cymbal at the same time, or if the saxophone or the trombones or something, the lower brass or whatever, you may catch it with the bass drum. And so you figure out different ways to catch the music, to accentuate the music using different parts of the drum set, depending on what the passage or what the horns were playing. So that's one aspect. But then when it came to playing the solo part of the music, then you treat the music like a small ensemble. You treat it like an ensemble. So there's a now we're not playing.
Now you're just back to playing the instrument in its pure form.
Wait. Let me go back.
Yeah.
You treat it like a combo, not an ensemble, because the ensemble is the whole band playing together. When you come to the solo section, it's like a combo. And so, but then, there's also inside the combo, it may be some horn background licks that you need to catch. So you catch those things. But then, so it's two different entities that's going on in the big band setting. You have a combo setting that's in the solo section, but then you have an ensemble setting when everybody's playing together.
There's Did you know Idris Muhammad?
Not very well. I knew Idris.
He went to New York when you were in New Orleans. I mean, he's
I know his story. I know who he is. I met him, and I've had conversations with him, and we fellowship. But Idris was he's a bit older than I am, and so he was already gone. He had already left New Orleans by the time I came on the music scene. He was already well established and doing his thing. I didn't get to know him until after I became more established as a musician, and we had conversations, and we had interactions and fellowship. But I didn't know him intimately as I knew some of the other musicians around New Orleans.
Absolutely. What about your uncle? He talk to me a little bit about maybe it was your grandfather that was with Louis Armstrong in those where they held all these kids.
And it was a detention home.
What is that? What was the
waif's
yeah?
The waif's home. It was the waif's home, And it was early on in his life. It was 1913 that he told me that he played with Louis Armstrong in the Waif's Home. And the Waif's Home was a detention center for youth. For wayward youth, people who had broken the law, and they wouldn't bring them to the adult jail. They brought them to a youth jail, which is what the Waif's Home was, a youth jail. And so in that setting, I guess they offered different things, and music was one of the things that they offered. Louis Armstrong was a part of the band, and the band master, the guy who was the director, his name was Mr. Peter Davis, and so they had all these kids who kind of come off the streets and that kind of thing, put an instrument in their hand, and then they started playing together and had a band together. So my grandfather was a part of that whole setting with the kids, and as a result, my grandfather taught me how to play early 1920s music, ragtime music, and those kinds of things.
Wow.
He taught me that, and because that was the music of his era. So I didn't have to go into to study that music to find out what it was. I got it firsthand, and then on the other side of the coin, I learned how to play swing and to play straight ahead jazz through my other uncle, Walter Papi Lasty, who played the drums as well. And so, and then also my Uncle Melvin and David, they had a combo together, and they would actually rehearse in my grandmother's living room, which is where I was raised, and they would roll my crib into the room. I'm telling you the truth. Roll my crib into the room, and I heard the music firsthand. And so I never had to go back and really study to see what, I heard moaning and Sister Sadie and A Night in Tunisia, all those kinds of things. I heard that as a young boy growing up. That music was always a part of me, and it was never foreign to me. So I credit my family in so many ways for my growth and development as a musician.
These, not that it's really, it's better, it's improved, but like, would you say that, like, your Uncle Louis, like, they were ambassadors for civil rights at that time as well?
Well, as much as they could be, yes.
Like, Lionel Hampton was a political cat. I mean, I don't know. Like, to me, jazz, like, the whole idea of what you're talking about, playing with intensity without volume. It's just about pulse and dynamics and urgency. And that has everything to do with social consciousness. And, like, Ahmad Jamal, all the guys you play with, like, at one time, that music, I think I mean, going from a youth jail, and they must have been everywhere.
Yeah, well, you know just about as much as I know about that. We weren't born at that time, so we can only imagine certain things and check out the things that we read about in the history books and so forth and so on in that context. But so I guess musicians have always had a social consciousness about life and about social conditions, and so. Yeah, I mean, so
what are some of the causes that you would play for or have played for that you believe strongly in?
That's an interesting question. I can't say that I was actually in the trenches in those trenches for those kinds of fights, but
no. Of course not.
I have played for like voting drives, trying to get people to come out and vote. I have been part of those kinds of things.
Like the day, the election day, like you're playing at some precinct.
Well, yeah. I mean, I played not necessarily at the precinct, but I used to play on a truck. Like we used to set up on a truck. My grandfather was in the political arena. In the 60s and 70s, he was what you call He was a ward leader, and during that time, he was called a ward leader. The ward leader was kind of like a social activist that kind of rallied people together. But he also had parole power,
right?
That was given to him by the mayor and so forth. So if someone was in jail, they could call my grandfather, Mr. Lasty, so and so went to jail. He said, well, what's the charges? Oh, he was loitering, or he was drunk in public or whatever. And then my grandfather could actually put a call in to the precinct, find out what the charges were and those kinds of things, and have him released, because he had the power to do that. Right. He had parole power to do that. And so, but not only that, he worked with an organization in New Orleans called the OPPVL, which is with A.L. Davis and A.P. Turo, who were definitely in the political trenches. He worked with that group, and as a result, when it was time for election time to come around, he would kind of organize voter drives,
right?
And as a result of doing that, we would play music. We would get on the back of a flatbed truck and ride. I'm telling you the truth. And ride through the neighborhoods. Awesome. With these signs, get out and vote, and the music would kind of call people out from their houses and that kind of thing. And then once they got outside and they saw the music, they saw the flatbed truck passing around, and then they would have all these signs on them, and they'd have people with a blowhorn. Make sure you get out and vote. Go and vote. Blah 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 blah. Make sure you find your precinct and all those kinds of things. So in that regard, I did do a little work as far as social consciousness is concerned with the voter drive.
Well, actually, it was instilled in you early on. To be an advocate. And I think. By the way, in our first, I wanted you to elaborate on this a little bit because, I played you that audio clip in our first interview going way back. Ahmad, in our interview, talking about when he played drums in a burlesque house, 8 hours a night. He and the drummer would switch back and forth between piano and drums. And you said that his hands and his feet were totally in time together. And so I think, did you ask him if he was a drummer ever, and he denied it or something? Because that was
we never had that conversation about him being a drummer.
Yeah.
I don't. Well, I think they did ask him once because I did when I first started playing with him. I saw his 2 feet moving together. He was pat the left and the right, like switching off the left and right, left right, left right. And I asked him one day if he was a drummer. He said, "No, I don't play drums. I'm a piano, and I play the piano." Now he could have been just pulling my leg or just kind of.
Well, no, I think the only reason he gave me that information, he was stunned. It's a long story, but it was just such a cosmic experience. And what was the? Did you have a chance to work with Joe Banishak or Alan Toussaint, or did you ever record at Minute? Or I just am curious about your discography is so DL. I feel like you were on more recording sessions that are currently in circulation.
Yeah. I didn't work with Joe Banishak, but I did do a couple of sessions at Ellis Marcellus' studio. Not Ellis Marcellus. Alan Toussaint studio, which was called CSAN Studios. It was called CSAN Studios. So I did do a couple of sessions with him, but I never really worked with Alan in his band or anything like that. I just did a couple of cameo things with him, occasionally. Nothing long term, but nothing really serious.
In 50 years, when people hear this interview, what do you want people to remember you for, Herlin Riley?
One person that I have passion for. I do have a passion for playing the drums, and I have a deep love and respect for human beings, and I want to continue that legacy, and always want to be um, um, a soldier in the perpetuation of jazz music, and just keeping this music and this culture alive. I want to be able to remain uh, an advocate for this music and for this culture. This Ahmad Jamal called jazz music the great. This is America's classical music.
Right.
This is America's classical music. And there's just like there's European classical music. This is America's classical music.
No, it's a great call. Yeah.
It was born right here in America.
Yeah.
And even more specific than that, I feel like it was born here in the South and in New Orleans. And so, as being an elder statesman of the music, I still want to continue and perpetuate this culture.
I think that's absolutely beautiful. Herlin, listen, I love talking to you, man, but I'll let you get back to your family. It's been such an honor. Yeah.
I guess you hear my little grandbaby.
Yeah, man, that's beautiful. That's great. They're happy. I got my 2 daughters downstairs, so we can wrap it, baby. And it was great to connect with you again, man.
Great, brother. Great talking to you, man. And I hope the listeners can get something out of the conversation, and that they can some wholesome information that they can use in their own personal lives.
And it will live on long after we've left this planet. So many blessings, dude.
Peace and blessings to you, to my friend.
All right, man. Peace.
All right, Jay.
Bye.
Take care.
Yeah.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.